The backpack. Trapped in rock for 5 years reveals a father and daughter's final days. It began as an ordinary hike in the Rocky Mountains. 5 college students laughing, snapping photos, chasing fresh air. But then one of them spotted something wedged in a dark crevice. An old backpack. Inside, a faded notebook. Family photos blurred by water. And a tiny pink jacket, too small for anyone on that trail. The pages whispered of storms, collapsed paths, and desperate hope. Whose words were these? And why had no one seen them for 5 long years? What started as a carefree hike turned into the unraveling of a haunting mystery. A story of love, loss, and the mountain that never gave back its secrets. Until now, it was late autumn in the Rockies, the kind of day when the sun fought its way through thin clouds but never fully broke free. The air was crisp, the trees were already shedding most of their leaves, and the wind carried the scent of pine and damp earth. For a group of college students from Denver, it was the perfect weekend for a short hiking trip. They had no plan to conquer a peak or chase records. It was meant to be lighthearted, a way to stretch their legs, breathe mountain air, and take a break from campus life. Laughter drifted along the trail as they wound their way upward, backpacks bouncing, water bottles clinking. By midday, the group reached a narrow ridge where the rocks broke into a small plateau. The view was stunning. Valleys stretched below, streaked with rivers that caught the faint sun like ribbons of silver. They spread out their snacks and sat on boulders, talking about classes, music, and life. Then came the voice that shifted everything. "Hey, what's that?" A tall boy named Jason called, pointing toward a deep crack in the rock wall. At first, it looked like nothing more than shadows and moss clinging to stone. Curiosity drew them closer. Kneeling near the edge, one girl peered into the narrow gap where rainwater had carved its path over years. There, wedged between 2 slabs of granite, something dark jutted out. Jason found a sturdy stick and worked on it carefully. The object shifted with a reluctant scrape, mud peeling away. When it finally slid free, the group realized it was an old backpack, weather-beaten and frayed. The sight silenced their chatter. Time had done its work. Straps torn, fabric discolored, zippers stiff with rust. Still, the shape of it spoke of someone who had once carried it with purpose. They gathered in a hesitant circle. One girl, her hands trembling, pulled the flap open. Inside lay a handful of items faded, broken, but painfully human. First came photographs. Edges curled, colors washed into pale ghosts. Smiling faces stared back. A man with tired but kind eyes. A woman with dark hair. And a little girl with missing front teeth. The students exchanged uneasy glances. This was no forgotten hiker's gear. It was personal. Next came a child's jacket, once pink but now dulled to grayish rose. The smallness of it struck like a blow. It could only have belonged to a child. The group fell into an almost reverent silence. Finally, at the bottom of the pack was a notebook, its cover warped by water. When they flipped it open, smudged ink blurred across the page, yet words still surfaced. Faint but legible. Day 3. Heavy rain. The trail has collapsed. I hope someone finds this. The handwriting wavered between steady adult strokes and the lighter hand of a child. It carried fear, but also the desperate hope that someone, someday, might read it. The air around the group grew heavy. No one spoke for a long moment. It was as if the mountains themselves demanded silence, holding their breath with the students. They realized they had stumbled into the remnants of a story, one written in hardship and left unfinished. At last, one of the girls whispered, "We have to call someone." Her voice broke the spell, and they packed the items gently back into the bag. The hike was forgotten. The day had turned into something far different. When they reached the ranger station at the base of the trail, officials took the discovery with grave expressions. Word spread quickly through the small mountain town nearby. The mention of a pink jacket and an old notebook pulled at memories buried under 5 years of unanswered questions. Locals gathered in hushed groups, trading stories. They remembered the case of a man and his young daughter who had vanished during a hiking trip. Search parties had scoured the mountains. Helicopters combed the ridges. Dogs sniffed every trail, but no trace was found. Now, with the backpack unearthed, the silence of those years cracked open. It was as if a door had been unlocked, and grief long locked away rushed back to the surface. People spoke the names they had avoided for years. His name had been Daniel Carter, a hard-working engineer. Her name had been Emily, a lively 8-year-old girl. The town had whispered about them for months after they went missing, then slowly, painfully moved on. The return of their belongings was like a haunting. It reminded everyone that mountains keep their secrets, but not forever. And sometimes, the truth rises to the surface when the world is ready to bear it. That night, the sheriff held a meeting in the town hall. Officials explained that recovery teams would return to the site. The goal was clear: to find the rest of the story the backpack had begun to tell. For the college students, the day had transformed from adventure to revelation. They replayed the moment again and again, the sight of the pink jacket, the smudged ink, the eerie stillness. It was no longer a casual trip. It had become a memory they would carry for life. In the days that followed, local news stations picked up the story. Reporters filmed the trailhead, cameras lingering on the ranger station where the items were stored. Interviews with townspeople echoed with the same words. We always wondered what happened. The mountains stood quiet through it all, unmoved by human voices. Snow dusted the higher peaks, promising winter's arrival. Somewhere in those ridges lay the final answers, waiting. For Sarah Carter, the wife who had stayed home that weekend, the mother who had lost her child. The call came late that evening. Her world, suspended between hope and despair for 5 long years, shifted with the sound of a deputy's voice. They had found something. She drove to the station, hands clenching the wheel, heart hammering. Inside, she was shown the backpack. The sight of the little jacket crumpled her to the floor. The photographs, though faded, were unmistakable. The notebook, though blurred, carried her husband's hand, and the jacket she remembered folding it, tucking it into the bag for her daughter before the trip. Tears blurred her vision, but beneath the grief was a kind of grim relief. She knew now that their story had not simply vanished, it had been left behind, waiting to be heard. The town, once again, turned its eyes toward the mountains. Officials prepared for careful searches in the coming days, and Sarah braced herself, knowing that the truth, whatever it was finally close. The discovery was no longer just an accident by a group of students. It was the opening of a door that had remained shut for half a decade. And through it, the story of Daniel and Emily Carter would finally step back into the light. Daniel Carter had always been a man who carried the weight of responsibility quietly. As a construction engineer, his hands bore the calluses of years spent building bridges and highways across Colorado. He was respected at work for his precision and calm judgment. But at home, he was simply a father who adored his little girl. Emily was 8 years old that fall. She was a child with wide hazel eyes and a habit of asking endless questions about everything she saw. At school, she was known for her drawings of animals and mountains, always insisting her father would one day take her to see the real wild. Sarah, Daniel's wife, was devoted to her job at a local accounting firm. Deadlines kept her tethered to the office more than she liked, but she worked hard to keep the family secure. She had hesitated when Daniel suggested a father-daughter hiking trip. "Is it safe?" she had asked one evening over dinner. Her fork rested untouched, worry etched into her voice. Daniel had smiled softly. "I've hiked those trails before. I'll keep her safe." Sarah, she deserves this adventure. Emily had clapped her hands in excitement. "Please, Mom, I'll keep a journal and tell you everything when we come back." Her eyes sparkled with the kind of joy that was hard to deny. Sarah finally relented, though unease lingered in her heart. She packed Emily's favorite pink jacket herself, folding it neatly and slipping it into the small backpack. Before they left, she kissed both on the forehead and said, "Be careful. Come home to me." That Saturday morning, Daniel and Emily set out before dawn. The truck rumbled along the quiet road, headlights carving paths through lingering mist. Emily sat in the passenger seat with her little notebook open, already scribbling words. Day 1. She wrote carefully. "Dad and I are going on a real adventure. The mountains are bigger than I imagined." Her small letters leaned slightly to the left, but her excitement filled every stroke. The trailhead was still and quiet when they arrived. Daniel adjusted his larger pack while Emily bounced on her toes, her breath making clouds in the chilly morning air. Birdsong echoed through the forest as they began their climb. The first day unfolded like a dream. They stopped often for Emily to take pictures with a disposable camera Sarah had bought her. Daniel pointed out animal tracks, teaching her to recognize deer prints and the claw marks of a bear scratched high on a tree. At noon, they ate sandwiches on a flat rock overlooking a valley. Emily swung her legs and hummed to herself, occasionally jotting notes in her journal. Daniel watched her and felt an ache of pride. This was the childhood he wanted for her, full of wonder, not screens and noise. By evening, they pitched their small tent near a clearing. Emily gathered sticks for the fire while Daniel struck a match. The crackling flames painted their faces with gold as they roasted marshmallows, sticky fingers making her giggle. "Dad," Emily said between bites, "do you think we'll see the stars tonight?" Daniel leaned back, gazing at the sky where the first glimmers already appeared. "Yes," he said. "Out here, they'll look brighter than anywhere else." Later, as the night deepened, the two lay side by side outside the tent. The Milky Way stretched like a river of light, unbroken by city glare. Emily whispered, "It feels like we're closer to heaven." Daniel wrapped an arm around her and whispered back, "Maybe we are?" Her small body relaxed against him, her breathing slowing as she drifted into sleep. He stayed awake a little longer, listening to the forest breathe. Morning arrived crisp and cool. Emily woke first, tugging at her shoes, eager for the day ahead. "Come on, Dad. The mountains are waiting," she chirped, already scribbling a note. Day 2. I'm still excited. The birds woke me up. They followed the trail deeper into the mountains. The air grew thinner, the path steeper, but Emily's energy never wavered. She skipped ahead, stopping to examine flowers or marvel at the sound of a waterfall crashing in the distance. Around midday, clouds began to gather. It was subtle at first, wisps of gray, curling at the edges of the horizon. Daniel glanced upward, his brow furrowing slightly. Weather in the Rockies was unpredictable. He knew that a clear morning could turn into a storm by afternoon. Still, the path ahead seemed manageable, and Emily was too full of joy to worry. They reached another lookout point where cliffs dropped sharply into a ravine. Daniel made Emily step back from the edge, his hand firm on her shoulder. "Always respect the mountain," he said gently. "It doesn't forgive carelessness." Emily nodded seriously, scribbling the words into her notebook. She loved writing down her father's lessons as if they were treasures. Her handwriting was dotted with smudges where raindrops had already begun to fall. By late afternoon, the sky darkened. The wind carried a chill, tugging at their jackets. Emily shivered slightly, but Daniel reassured her they would set up camp soon. They pitched their tent near a cluster of trees that offered some shelter. The rain began in light drops, pattering against the nylon fabric. Emily nestled inside, clutching her notebook, and wrote by flashlight, "It's raining, but Dad says it's part of the adventure." Outside, Daniel secured the lines against the wind, his face lit in flashes by distant lightning. He felt the unease of a seasoned hiker. Something in the air warned of more to come. Still, he forced a calm smile when he returned to the tent. They ate a simple dinner of granola bars and fruit, laughter warming the small space. Emily asked him to tell a story, and he spun one about a brave little bird who found its way home in the storm. Her eyelids grew heavy, and soon she slept, her pink jacket tucked around her shoulders. Daniel lay awake, listening to the rain pound harder, the wind howl louder. Each gust rattled the tent poles, sending shivers through his chest. He knew tomorrow might bring trouble, but he refused to let fear touch Emily's dreams. When dawn arrived, the world outside was sodden and gray. The trail glistened with water, small streams cutting across their path. Daniel considered turning back, but Emily's face lit up at the sight of mist rolling through the trees. Day 3, she wrote eagerly. "The mountain looks like it's breathing." Her words were innocent, filled with awe. Daniel kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Let's see where the path leads today." They packed their gear and continued, unaware that the storm building over the ridge would soon test everything they carried: strength, hope, and love. By the third afternoon, the mountain had changed its face. Clouds pressed low, heavy and swollen with rain. The air grew damp, and the trail under Daniel's boots softened into mud. Emily's steps slowed as she clutched her father's hand. Her notebook was tucked away inside her pack, safe from the weather. She glanced up at him with questioning eyes. "Are we okay, Dad?" she asked softly. Daniel squeezed her hand and forced a smile. "We'll be fine, sweetheart. We just need to find a dry spot soon." The drizzle became a downpour within minutes. Water ran in rivulets down the slopes, carrying loose stones and dirt. Thunder rolled across the peaks, a deep growl that made the trees shudder. Daniel quickened his pace. scanning for shelter. The trail curved sharply, but part of it had collapsed in a fresh landslide. Jagged rocks jutted out where the earth had given way. Leaving no safe passage, they turned back, searching for the slope. That was when Daniel spotted a small cave, half hidden by shrubs. It wasn't deep, but its overhang promised some protection from the storm. "Come on, Em," he urged gently, lifting her over a slippery patch. The girl's shoes were soaked, her cheeks streaked with rain. Still, she managed a tired smile when she saw the cave. Inside, the ground was damp but firm. Daniel spread their thin sleeping pad and sat Emily down. He removed her jacket, wrung the water from it, and wrapped it around her again. The storm outside raged louder, slamming sheets of rain against stone. Lightning cracked so close that the flash lit the cave like daylight. Emily jumped, and Daniel pulled her close, whispering, "I've got you." They stayed that way for hours. Daniel tried to keep her mind busy, pointing out shapes in the rocks and inventing stories, but his eyes kept flicking to the mouth of the cave, where mud began to trickle. By nightfall, the rain had not stopped. Hunger gnawed at them. Though Daniel rationed their remaining food, Emily wrote one shaky line in her notebook before bed. "It's raining hard. Dad says we'll be okay." Sleep was restless. The sound of boulders shifting on the slope above haunted Daniel's ears. He lay awake, holding his daughter close, praying for the storm to ease. Morning brought no relief. The rain continued, a relentless curtain of water. When Daniel peered outside, he saw that part of the slope had slid further, blocking much of the view. They were trapped more securely now. The cave was not completely sealed, but the path out was dangerous, slick with mud. He decided they should wait better to preserve energy than risk a fall. Emily tried to be brave. She hummed a song from school, her small voice trembling against the roar of the storm. Daniel kissed her damp hair and said, "You're stronger than you know." That day, he began to write in the notebook alongside her. His handwriting was steadier, though smudged by moisture. Day 3. Heavy rain. Trail collapsed. "Hoping someone finds us." The words were not meant for himself. They were a message, a record. In case the mountains swallowed them whole, he wrote carefully, each line a lifeline cast into an uncertain future. Night came colder. Daniel gave Emily his jacket and shivered in the damp air. His stomach ached, but he told her stories to keep her mind away from hunger. She asked, "Will Mom be worried?" Daniel swallowed hard and answered, "She knows we're together. That's what matters." Emily nodded, her eyelids heavy, and drifted to sleep in his arms. By the 4th day, food was almost gone. They shared the last of the fruit, splitting it into small bites. Emily licked her fingers and whispered, "I wish we were home." Daniel could only nod, his throat tight. He tried to light a small fire at the cave's entrance, hoping smoke might signal someone, but the wood was too wet, and the flames sputtered out. The notebook filled with new lines. Day 4. Food is nearly gone. Emily is tired, but brave. Rain still heavy. The ink blurred in places, but the meaning was clear. Emily curled in his lap, whispering, "If someone finds this, they'll know we were here." Daniel hugged her tighter, silent tears mixing with rain dripping from the cave's ceiling. His heart broke, but his voice stayed steady. "Yes, they'll know." That night, a roar louder than thunder echoed outside. A section of hillside gave way, rocks crashing like giants down the slope. Dust filled the cave, and Daniel shielded Emily with his body until the rumble faded. When the air cleared, he saw that the cave entrance was narrower now. A wall of debris had piled just beyond their reach. The little opening that remained let in only slivers of gray light. Emily whimpered. Frightened, Daniel pressed her face against his chest, whispering, "It's okay. Don't look." But he knew the mountain was closing in. The 5th day arrived with eerie quiet. The rain slowed, replaced by mist seeping through the cracks. The silence felt heavier than the storm. Emily was weaker now. Her journal entry was only 3 words, crooked and faint. "Still with Dad." Daniel kissed the page, unable to stop his hands from trembling. He added his own words beneath hers. Day 5. Storm easing. Little hope left. "But she is safe with me." The letters slanted, evidence of his fatigue. That night, he told her stories of home, of Sarah waiting with Coco, of their small kitchen glowing with warmth. Emily smiled faintly, murmuring, "I can see it." Daniel held her until her breathing slowed. The cave was cold, the air damp, but he wrapped himself around her like armor. He whispered the last words he had strength for. "I love you, Em." The mountain answered with silence. The storm had passed, but no rescue came. In that silence, father and daughter slipped into a sleep from which they would not wake. The notebook remained beside them, pages smudged but legible. The pink jacket stayed folded across Emily's chest, a fragile shield against the cold. Time moved on, but the cave held their story in stillness. For 5 years, wind and rain guarded their secret. Hikers passed the ridge, unaware of what lay hidden beneath, until one day, the mountain loosened its grip and allowed a backpack to surface. The silence had finally broken. The truth waited to be found, carried in ink, fabric, and bone. It was a story of love stronger than fear, written in the quiet heart of a storm. The news spread quickly after the backpack was found. By the next morning, recovery teams were hiking into the same ridge where the students had made their discovery. They carried ropes, helmets, and a quiet determination, knowing they were chasing the remnants of a 5-year mystery. The mountains greeted them with silence. Snow capped the higher ridges, while mist drifted low along the valley. Every step carried the weight of both hope and dread. Sarah Carter waited at the ranger station. Her hands clenched a paper cup of coffee she could not drink. 5 years of not knowing had carved deep lines across her face, but her eyes still searched for answers. Deputy Marshal Grant approached her with steady calm. "We'll do everything we can," he said softly. She nodded, unable to find words. The search team reached the cave by late afternoon. Fresh slides of earth still marked the slope, evidence of the storm that had sealed the place years ago. The cave mouth was narrow, almost hidden, but the debris carried a story waiting to be told. They worked carefully, clearing rock and dirt. Shovels scraped stone. Ropes anchored climbers who shifted boulders one by one. The air was thick with dust and silence. At last, a narrow tunnel opened. Inside lay the stillness of years gone by. Flashlights pierced the dark, revealing shapes huddled together near the back wall. The team fell quiet. It was unmistakable, a father's frame curled around the small form of a child. Time had taken its toll, but the posture told the truth no words could capture. Beside them lay the notebook, pages warped but intact. The pink jacket still rested across Emily's chest. The silence in the cave felt sacred, as though the mountain itself demanded reverence. They carried the remains out with care, not as evidence, but as loved ones returning home. Each movement was slow, deliberate, honoring the lives preserved in stone and silence. Back at the station, Sarah stood when she saw the small bundle first. Her knees buckled, and for a moment the room blurred. But then she steadied herself, whispering, "That's my baby's jacket." The officials gave her space, but she stepped forward. Her trembling fingers brushed the faded fabric. Memories crashed over her the morning she had folded that jacket. The kiss she'd placed on her daughter's forehead. Tears slid down her face, but within them was something new. Certainty. The waiting was over. The not knowing had ended. Later that evening, the sheriff called a town meeting. Neighbors filled the hall, murmurs filling the air until silence fell. At the front, the officials laid out what they had found. The townspeople listened with heavy hearts. Many remembered the search parties, the prayers, the posters with Emily's smiling face. Now the mystery was closed, but closure came with sorrow. Sarah stood at the podium, her voice unsteady but resolute. "My husband did everything he could. He gave Emily love, even in their last hours. That's how I will remember them." Her words carried through the hall like a prayer. The funeral was held a week later. Snow dusted the cemetery as family, friends, and strangers gathered. 2 caskets rested side by side, draped in simple cloth. A pastor spoke of endurance, of a love that even death could not erase. Neighbors shared stories of Daniel's quiet strength and Emily's laughter that had once filled their street. The sound of weeping mingled with the wind. Sarah placed the notebook atop her daughter's casket. The ink was faded, but the words were eternal. She whispered, "Your story will never be forgotten." In the weeks that followed, the town honored the Carters in quiet ways. A plaque was placed at the trailhead, engraved with their names. Hikers paused there to read before beginning their own journeys. The backpack and jacket were preserved in a small glass case at the local museum. Visitors stood before it in silence, some with tears, others with reverent awe. It became more than an artifact. It was a testament to love, courage, and the fragility of life. Sarah returned often. Sitting in front of the display, she would close her eyes and imagine Daniel's voice, steady and calm, calm, she would picture Emily's laughter echoing through the halls of memory. Healing was not quick. Grief had no clock, no straight line. But with each passing day, she carried less of the weight alone. The town rallied around her. Neighbors brought meals. Colleagues covered shifts. Children from Emily's old school drew pictures and left them at her door. It was community, woven tight in compassion. One evening, Sarah walked to the trailhead alone. She stood before the plaque, the wind tugging gently at her coat. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe deeply of the mountain air. "This was where you found joy," she whispered. "And this is where I will remember you." Her voice was steady now, no longer breaking on the words. The mountains loomed tall, indifferent yet eternal. They had taken much, but they had also returned the truth. In that balance, Sarah found a fragile peace. Years later, hikers still paused at the plaque. Some touched it for luck. Others whispered prayers. The story of Daniel and Emily Carter lived on, carried in each retelling. For some, it was a warning about the power of nature. For others, it was a lesson in love and sacrifice. But for Sarah, it was a promise that their memory would never fade. The notebook's final words echoed in her mind whenever she felt weak. "Still with Dad," a child's simple line, a father's unspoken vow. It was not just a record of tragedy, it was a declaration of love, etched into time itself, and it became her anchor. The reminder that even in the darkest storm, they had faced it together. As the seasons turned, Sarah rebuilt her life. She volunteered at search and rescue events, speaking to families who faced the same agonizing uncertainty she once endured. Her story gave them courage, and her voice carried the strength she had earned through loss. The mountains remained, vast and indifferent. But now she saw them differently, not only as the place of her deepest pain, but as the sacred ground where love had been proven unbreakable. She walked their trails with reverence, each step a quiet prayer. Daniel and Emily's story lived not in sorrow, but in gratitude. Gratitude for the days they had, for the laughter, for the notebook filled with a child's hand. Gratitude for the truth finally revealed, for closure. For peace. In the end, the legacy of father and daughter was not the storm that claimed them, it was the bond that endured beyond it, and that legacy became a light for others, a reminder that even in silence, love speaks louder than fear.